It's September 23rd, 2024, and this is the Watson Weekly, your essential e-commerce digest. Today on our show, Shopify's progress in the enterprise market. Biden White House makes de minimis announcement. Amazon's return to office memo code for layoffs. And Salesforce makes several release announcements at Dreamforce, or does it? And finally, the Investor Minute, which contains 5 items this week from the world of venture capital, acquisitions, and IPOs. But first, in our shopping cart full of news, Shopify's progress in the enterprise market. I often get asked if Shopify is making progress in enterprises. The answer is, of course, yes, but often you can't see the progress beneath the surface. You only see it when the train comes out the other end of the tunnel. Primarily, the installations heading in Shopify direction in enterprise are vintage 2010 through 2014. Many are some level of hybrid custom system, but many are also some flavor of demandware, and depending on the vintage year, frustrated by huge Salesforce bills that seem to be getting ever higher for a stack that's increasingly harder to maintain for something not improving at the same rate. Still, enterprise sales takes time. You need credibility, convincing, comfort, and patience. Shopify has the earned media power that most platforms would envy. That might start a conversation that ends up going nowhere. These deals need to pass a lot of hurdles for Shopify to even have a chance at bat. Things like an investor event, platform end of life, or support or contract coming up, a digital business organization that's comfortable with SaaS or Shopify. Usually it starts in this part of the organization, and especially where someone has a traditional IT org. Often the business teams come from other places that may have tried Shopify at a smaller or mid-sized company. Also, if you have an IT organization that is stretched thin or beaten down, or maybe you have a retiring IT leader, that's another possibility. Even then, you still need to pass what I call the arc of skepticism within the IT organization through a progressive series of meetings over a 6-month to a year period. Step 1 is Shopify is a toy. Step 2, maybe we should take another look, but really, do we want another vendor in the mix? Step 3, it does seem to be a little more flexible than we thought before. Step 4, okay, maybe we might admit there are some advantages here. And step 5, we might even look like heroes. Somewhere in between steps 4 and 5, the CEO and CFO get together and step in. The traditional Shopify story of total cost of ownership and innovation is great for the mid-market, but in enterprise IT settings, it is often not enough, only for the business teams to keep trying to push the rock up the hill. The reason is, even if the business team makes the decision, I don't know if you noticed, there are no developers on business teams. They can't integrate anything. Even if you hire a third party to help set up the Shopify account itself, you still need to integrate it to all your enterprise back office. That requires your IT organization, and in particular, an enthusiastic one. Even then, a successful sale of Shopify might lead to an implementation discussion that can be an interminable nightmare of delays, sequencing, budgeting, etc. Shopify can solve for the platform, but the integration problem is another story altogether. Integrating Shopify with a complex enterprise is its own beast of an operation, and the primary reason that these implementations might delay or some may not ever see the light of day. This is what Shopify is signed up for, and I see many in some stage of this arc of skepticism and others in the interminable implementation stage. Of course, there are quite a few live as well. Our second story. Biden White House makes announcement on de minimis. White House executive de minimis announcements puts the train on the tracks. While the announcement itself doesn't do much in the short term, there's more to come. Possibly. First, what's the de minimis exemption? Well, a shipment is eligible for the de minimis exemption if the aggregate fair retail value of the articles being imported are $800 or less in the United States, which has one of the highest de minimis exemptions in the world. De minimis shipments enter the U.S. with less information than other imports and are also not subject to duties and taxes. It seems like the Biden administration is targeting both of these points. The new announcement from the administration issued a notice of proposed rulemaking, which is basically legalese for sometime soon we will think very strongly about releasing a plan which maybe might later lead to action. So what exactly happened right now? Well, not much yet. They're asking Congress to do a whole bunch of things, and in doing so admits that the president can't do so much on his own. That's it? Yeah, pretty much at this point, a lot of heat and light over a wait and see. By the way, isn't this the same U.S. Congress which can't fund the country's existing obligations on time each year without shutting itself down? Yes, that's the same Congress. Well, what numbers did they release as part of this announcement? One set of data points they released said the number of items with de minimis exemptions increased from 140 million to over 1 billion a year in the last 10 years. And over half of all de minimis exemptions come from Chinese-founded e-commerce platforms. And they were very specific about saying founded and not headquartered, because many of them, the country of founding doesn't make a difference anymore because they have moved headquarters all over the world. This number of updated de minimis exemption shipments is higher than last year's CBP report, saying it was almost half. And I can't actually believe this number actually did surge given public reports. What are the reasons they're doing this? Well, they don't get as much information about de minimis shipments, which makes it hard to track illicit and unsafe items. Also, items subject to tariffs cannot be tracked if they are under de minimis today. The administration also calls out that consumers are being harmed by bad products entering the country. How many consumers have been harmed? Well, there are no specific instances of harm called out, but I'm sure they're compiling this. And what are they interested in doing? Well, there are a few parts of the program. They're adding additional specific protections for U.S. textile manufacturers. They're asking Congress to force electronic collection of 10-digit HTS codes, which are very specific, about all shipments coming in, even under the de minimis. They're also setting restrictions on who is claiming the exemption for this program. Finally, ensuring the Consumer Product Safety Commission gets electronic certificates of compliance for all items, including those under the de minimis. Why now? Well, do you really have to ask? It's an election year, folks. And isn't this the same administration that has about a 50-50 chance of being voted out this year? Well, yep, that's correct. However, there does seem to be broad bipartisan support on the issue, which that and $2.90 will get you on the subway. All told, this ruling or release does sound like a boon for players like Avalara and other cross-border players with technology to automate HS code classification and filing. It also highlights the fact that without Congress, we will be in a waiting game with lots of important-sounding rhetoric until a reform bill is passed and signed. Our third story. Amazon's return to office memo is code for layoffs. Andy Jassy, I do feel, is a great executive. I believe that. And most anyone could have something to learn from him. However, I do believe that he's fundamentally wrong about the way the world works now. And frankly, the way I grew up at companies, it's deader than dead. Why? Talent finds talent wherever it is. You may have seen Amazon release a press release about asking its workers to return to the office for 5 days. And while they are offering rare exceptions, previously the policy was 3 days. So presumably there's a lot more people back in the office that won't have any flexibility on Monday and Friday anymore. I mean, in the distant past, you used to have to distribute AT&T teleconference codes to have a 3-way call with different people about a topic. The world works very differently now. Collaboration tools are better, and communication is 24/7 across continents. And did I mention talent? If you are forced to find talent only in a single city, how limited are you? You will overpay for that talent for lower productivity. And by the way, Amazon has many offices, so aren't they just on Zoom? Chime calls with each other anyway? So about that memo, what did he say? Well, Jassy has been at Amazon 27 years and wants things to work the same way to preserve the culture. Back to 5 days a week, except for the rare exceptions. My point of view, sorry, you can't put that remote genie back in the bottle. And by the way, Amazon did not have the same culture at each remote office in the past. From an org structure point of view, Amazon also has mentioned that it has too many layers in this memo. And they're asking organizational leaders to increase the ratio of individual contributors to manager by 15%. They're worried about pre-meetings, going to pre-meetings, which then lead to executive decisions. Seriously, 15%? This seems like an arbitrary number. Amazon sounds like it has Shopify envy at this point, which has famously reduced the ratio of contributors to managers. Next up, are they following Toby's canceling of Slack channels due to too many pineapple and pizza discussions? And by the way, the fact that this particular part of the announcement is slid into a quote, return to office or else memo. Hello folks, this is a layoff memo. Andy Jassy has also created a new bureaucracy mailbox to root out inefficiency or unnecessary process. And I can't even comment on this without laughing. We just installed a new suggestion box in the mailroom. If anyone has any ideas, please, put them in there. And as you just heard, everyone in the office now, so you can use that new mailroom suggestion box. The upshot? Disagree and commit was the requirement for 3 days back to office in a previous 2023 post. Now, it's up or out. Jassy is calling this 5-day back to the office, but I have a different name. Back to the Stone Age. Given that anyone in an office these days is on Zoom or Teams calls 24/7, it does not seem like this will have much benefit unless they plan to move everyone back to Seattle as well. The genie will resist being put back in the bottle. Toothpaste ain't going back in the tube. And Amazon's talent will suffer for it. But by the way, Amazon wants a lower cost structure in terms of people, and this memo is nothing more than a forcing function for those changes. And our last story. Salesforce makes several release announcements at Dreamforce. Or does it? It seems to me that Dreamforce may actually only be a dream, and there's some kind of notion of lies, damn lies, and press releases. Two things first, disclaimers and the state of Salesforce. I was going to write about some of the releases of Agentforce, which is one of the things they talked about, and some of the chatbots were released. Except release seems to be overplayed. There are a number of what you might call chatbots they announced, Agentforce. Sounds like a new feature they may be upselling you soon. Quote, autonomous agents apparently, but we used to call those chatbots, right? But now they're autonomous, which sounds a little creepy. But I guess you can't charge enterprise prices for essentially service chatbots. And it wasn't even this that caught my eye, although it probably would have been if not for the next point. Instead, it was perhaps a standard legal disclaimer at the bottom of their 3,000-page webpage, which I'll link to in the notes. Any unreleased services or features referenced here are not currently available and may not be delivered on time or at all. Customers should make their purchase decisions based on features that are currently available. No shit. So Salesforce is telling us these items may not be delivered on time or at all or ever. In other words, don't trust what we say. Seriously, Salesforce? This is not even fine print. This is full-size print at the bottom of what's supposed to be a major software release. It sounds like instead of an inspiration, Dreamforce may be more of a fever dream. Features that may seem cool one day if we only get around to implementing them or making them work. It's kind of simple. You either deliver or you don't. And if I didn't know better, I would think Salesforce is playing directly into the hands of Shopify with this kind of foolishness. I even saw very many well-meaning Dreamforce posts by attendees very confused about what Salesforce is just playing nice to talk about and what things they're actually releasing, including from Mark Benioff himself. This shouldn't be that hard. It's a serious failure of marketing and product management, and it's not only Salesforce commerce products that are at risk here. It's marketing and Service Cloud too. The rent is too damn high, and those that have been customers for 5 to 10 years are tired of the same dream which their business teams have woken up to a nightmare. The barbarians are at the gate of Salesforce, and more companies are choosing simplicity and actual innovation over complexity and nice talk. I've seen nothing this week that will reverse the giant sucking sound going from Salesforce to other players like Shopify and BigCommerce, primarily because it's the entire stack that's being recreated off Salesforce. It's other marketing and data platforms that are benefiting as well. More acquisitions will not help Salesforce. Of course, it will help their sales teams, but is anyone convinced the same thing will not happen to Predict Spring POS that would happen to Demandware? A lot of new customers followed by slow decline and increasingly in relevance and apathy. Salesforce's acquisition strategy is similar to Oracle before it, a shell game of growth to cover up declines. It's that time, friends, for our Investor Minute. We have 5 items on the menu today. First, Cassandra Gray partners with private equity investor to buy Violet Gray back from Farfetch. Founder Cassandra Gray has partnered with 888 Midas Partners to purchase Violet Gray from Farfetch for an undisclosed amount. When Farfetch closed its beauty category, the brand became for sale at a lower price. This won't save the brand, but it could extend its life a bit. Second, European quick commerce startup Flink raises $150 million. Flink, a European quick commerce startup that operates in Germany and the Netherlands, raised a new $150 million funding round. Who knew that quick commerce was still a thing and that Flink could raise funding from investors? Third, DSV buys DB Schenker for $15.9 billion. Danish freight forwarder DSV has agreed to purchase German transportation and logistics provider DB Schenker for $15.9 billion from Deutsche Bahn. The acquisition will allow Deutsche Bahn to focus on its core rail business, reduce its debt, and assist DSV to grow its business in Germany. I wonder how regulators see this transaction. Fourth, startup eComtent raises $850K in seed funding. Toronto-based AI and e-commerce startup eComtent raises $850,000 in pre-seed funding that will be invested in its technology, the hiring of talent, and the scale of its operations. The startup believes that conversational search will become the new normal and proposes a way to help brands become a part of that conversation. And finally, apparel supply chain sustainability platform Retraced raises 15 million euros. Apparel supply chain compliance and sustainability platform Retrace has raised 15 million euros in Series A funding. As the EU Supply Chain Directive CSD came into effect in July, this sector will grow as brand needs to better communicate with customers due to the European Digital Product Passport. Brands that operate in Europe have another important regulatory requirement related to the sourcing and compliance of their apparel. And today's final word of the week this week is Timuhosen. Last week I spent some time at Shopware Shoptoberfest in Brooklyn at the Radagast Beer Hall in Brooklyn. It was a fun time and I got to do about 4 straight hours of podcasting, and I'm still trying to figure out what to do with all this content. And so you'll see it, I'm sure, over the next few weeks across all my channels. It's great to be hosted by Jason Nias, Hendrik, Sandra, and the entire Shopware team, and to meet a lot of great friends, old and new. Shout out to Victor Castro in the audience. Did you know that RMW Commerce has a brand new podcast? Check out the Watson Weekend for an unfiltered and lively e-commerce chat each week with me, Rick Watson, my co-host Jess Liseski, and an array of interesting guests and topics, all focused on e-commerce. You can find the Watson Weekend by searching for it on iTunes, Spotify, or YouTube. That's all for this week. Till next time, Watsonians. Hi, I'm Rick Watson, CEO and founder of RMW Commerce Consulting and host of the Watson Weekly Podcast, your essential e-commerce digest. Our production partner for the series is Citizen Race Car. The show is produced by Jose Baez, production manager Gabriela Montequin. To hear new episodes of the show every Monday morning, subscribe now at rmwcommerce.com/WatsonWeekly or wherever you get your podcasts.